In back-to-back games where the Warriors needed just one win, they've managed to find offense up and down the roster in the first half, like relying on Jonathan Kuminga's open court athleticism or Jimmy's drives, but have come up empty in the second. In both games, strings of turnovers and only a few back-to-back defensive breakdowns have made all the difference, as the Warriors, without Steph, simply don't have the ability to consistently create space for drivers and cutters or knock down threes. And now, heading back to Minnesota down 3-1 and still without Steph, the series is looking like a long shot. So what happened in games 3 and 4, and is it time to be realistic? Let's chat. So first, let's talk about how different the Warriors look without Steph. So Steph always obviously automatically draws two, and that happens on high ball screens, that happens on inverted ball screens, that happens on sideline out of bounds plays. It happens on post split actions when Draymond's in the post and Steph is running off a screen set at the elbow. And because Steph is always able to draw two, it gives the Warriors really easy offense, especially in high pick and roll. It enables Draymond to play in the short roll. It enables these inverted ball screens where then a guy like GP2 or Jonathan Kuminga can run off into wide open space, and et cetera, et cetera. There's just a lot of offense, and basically the entire Warriors system is based around the chaos and extra defender that Steph generates. Whenever Steph gets that double, how the backside changes and how Draymond especially have been really good at playing in that 4-on-3, which usually leads to defenders having to collapse and then kick out to wide open shooters on the corners, or someone maybe making a back cut along the baseline and then getting a wide open dunk. Just a lot of what you see during the regular season in Warriors games happens because of Steph and because of his defensive attention. And without him, if you haven't noticed, the Warriors offense just looks a lot more awkward. I think what's been clear, especially if you watched last night, is that when the Warriors pass up the first look that's usually generated out of their motion, last night it manifested in Jimmy or Pods especially not opting to take that wide open jump shot, wide open three, or look at the rim. Whenever you give up that shot, which is usually the best look you're going to get in a possession when you play the way the Warriors do, you're then asking your offense to generate against a set Minnesota half-court defense. Now, whenever Steph is the one that can operate out of that, Steph and Draymond can run action, or Steph and Looney can run action. Someone can set an exit screen in the corner for Steph to run around. And you can usually get a 2-on-1 in those situations, which leads to the 4-on-3 on the backside. But last night, that wasn't happening. In game 3, that wasn't happening. There's no Steph. So when you miss that first look, or when you don't opt to take it, your offense looks stagnant. And that's exactly what has been the problem for the Warriors, especially in these second halves. Now, let's talk about what the Jimmy Butler-led offense has looked like in games 3 and 4 and the problems with it. So, if we just go back to the Heat years, Jimmy has played in motion offenses before. Miami runs a motion-esque system with a lot of these cuts, handoffs, shooters. And obviously, Jimmy had a lot of success in those offenses surrounded by athleticism or shooters like Strus, Vincent, D-Rob, etc., all of those guys. And obviously, Jimmy, even though he's older and he's been a bit more injured this year, can still get to his spots. He can still find cutters. But defenses can load up on Jimmy, especially in the paint when he's surrounded by poor offense. The Warriors, when they've had Steph and Jimmy on the floor, sometimes opt to clear weak side and have Jimmy run ISOs, which can usually work if the Warriors are shooting well. But when the Warriors aren't shooting well, especially recently with Pods, Moody, Quinton Post, even Buddy, despite having those huge games, having relatively inconsistent shooting, it makes it really hard because Jimmy is not used to being surrounded by a bunch of guys that now have to generate offense in motion against defenses that don't respect them and are willing to live with those shots. Like, for example, last night, a lot of shots that were generated were looks for GP2 in the corner, which, while GP2 has been draining them, these defenses are willing to allow whenever it's Jimmy Butler that's not getting the shot. And I think if you've seen anything this playoffs, it's been a prevalence of zones, a prevalence of showing early help, which, while it does result in those corner threes sometimes, it's because the defenses are allowing them. The defenses are saying, okay, if we show early help in the paint and Jimmy comes in and opts to make a kick out, he's not drawing a foul. He's not trying to contort his body to put together a great shot or a great look at the rim. Instead, he's opting to kick out to Pods or GP2, who, even if they are open, sometimes won't even take that three. And when you get in that type of stagnant offense, you can't get in a rhythm. Even a Jimmy Butler-led offense doesn't work. Because ultimately, in Miami, it wasn't that Jimmy was just consistently getting to his spots and draining mid-rangers. It's also that there is motion around him, that there are shooters, that there is Bam who can finish. And the Warriors just don't have that without Steph Curry on the floor or without Pods, for example, playing well. But that leads us to number 3, Jonathan Kuminga. So Jonathan Kuminga's had a pretty good few games, especially in games 3 and 4, where Kuminga scored above 20 points in both games and looked relatively comfortable. I think the issue that a lot of Warriors fans have had with Kuminga recently is that Kuminga just didn't fit in their read and react offense and didn't get enough good playing time with Jimmy Butler. Because of that, he didn't fit in well, and he was ultimately taking away playing time from Podziemski, from Moody especially, who was having a really good shooting stretch to end the season. And because of that, Kuminga was really never able to get in a rhythm, especially with Jimmy. So I think a lot of Warriors fans, including us on this channel, thought that it would just be best if Jonathan Kuminga didn't really play at all. I think no one was really that upset at him getting back-to-back-to-back DNPs, especially to start the playoffs. And I think the harsh reality, though, is that because of the way that Kerr and the coaching staff opted to treat Kuminga, whenever the worst-case scenario happened, which is Steph going down, you then have virtually no one else to turn to outside of Jimmy Butler within your offense. So I don't think it's necessarily on the coaching staff that they didn't give Kuminga enough time, though, because I think if Steph didn't get injured, Kuminga probably still wouldn't be seeing this much playing time, and the Warriors probably would continue playing relatively well. I give the Warriors a pretty good shot at this series if Steph was healthy. But because Kuminga had to come in, get in his own offensive rhythm without Steph, which honestly he hasn't really played with that much this year either, it just looked super awkward. But in games 3 and 4, Kuminga found his rhythm. He found his rhythm in the open court especially. He found that whenever the Warriors gave him those isolations and cleared weak side for him, he was often able to score or draw fouls. And I think it looked a lot better, but I think part of the reason that it looked better with Kuminga is because they weren't tasking Kuminga as much with succeeding in their read and react motion. Instead, they're engineering sets for Kuminga to go downhill or for Kuminga to run in semi-transition against defenses that just aren't set. And obviously, Kuminga, being the exceptional athlete that he is, can succeed in those situations. But in terms of the outcomes for the Warriors in this series, I think it's pretty clear that a Kuminga-led offense, even with Jimmy as maybe the partner in crime, simply can't generate enough reliable looks against set half-court defenses that are loading up for Kuminga and Jimmy Butler. And because of that, they've looked really stagnant in some of these third, fourth quarter scenarios where they're just giving up 10 points straight and then the game is over. So I think if we could objectively talk about Kuminga without any emotion, the reality is that he is a good player in the open court. He's super athletic. He can finish in tough situations. He's good in these cuts and everything like that. But I think we also have to acknowledge that whenever the Warriors play the way that they have succeeded in for the last 10 years, especially with Steph in the offense, Kuminga simply isn't a good enough read and react player to fit in super well with Steph, Jimmy, and Dre consistently. Now, I think a part of that was definitely the fact that he didn't get enough ramp-up time with Jimmy Butler specifically, but I also think that if Pods and Moody are shooting even average, it doesn't really make much sense to put in Kuminga above them. But now, with the way the Warriors find themselves down 3-1, I think they really have no other option in Game 5 other than to go back to the same Kuminga Butler offense and hope that Pods, Moody, GP2, maybe Post are hitting their shots. Because I think the tough reality in last night's game was that there were multiple scenarios, especially there was a sequence where the Warriors basically gave the game away in the third quarter, where Pods simply making a wide open three could have brought the game to just 1 point. But instead, he misses it. Then the Warriors make a few blunders, a few turnovers. Anthony Edwards drains like 4 threes in a row, and suddenly the game is just over. So finally, as much as I don't really want to talk about this, I think we have to address the reality that down 3-1, it's pretty unlikely that the Warriors are going to eke this one out. Not only are they going to have to win Game 5, but then even with Steph back, they're going to have to win 3 games in a row. But I think if it's any solace to Warriors fans, it's that I think Mike Dunleavy Jr., Coach Kerr, Steph, Dre, Jimmy, Joe Lacob all clearly intend on running this back. I ultimately think that the Jimmy Butler trade was mainly intended for next season anyway, and I think that they have a real opportunity this offseason to move pieces, especially Jonathan Kuminga, if that doesn't end up working out, and still maintain an incredibly strong defense, a consistent motion offense, and Steph, even though he'll be a year older, we can still reasonably assume will be within the same level of talent as he is now. And I think the Warriors really do have one last shot at it next season. So while we obviously hope that the Warriors win Game 5 and will still show up to the film room regardless, I think we can expect that the Warriors will ultimately drop this series. Without Steph, they simply don't have a last resort to generate tough shots against set and fine-tuned playoff defenses. But if the Warriors can win Game 5 on the back of a great Jimmy and JK game, better shooting and decision-making from Pods, and a focused defense, a Steph resurgence in Game 6 may be able to save the Warriors. Thanks for watching. Let us know if you agree.